G'day peeps, my name is Scribbs and welcome back to yet another Project Arrhythmia speed paint / humanizing challenge, where we take the simplistic designs from the different levels of Project Arrhythmia and turn them into humans, or well, I'll try to the very best of my ability. Now in the last episode you guys really seemed to enjoy the character that I created out of the character Mist, which is basically just kind of like a spooky ghost that was in the level Peer Gynt that OL666 created. And a lot of you guys seem to be on the same train and actually came up with ideas for different sort of designs for some of his other levels, such as Nautilus. There also seemed to be a few people who asked for Aura, but it seemed like people were mostly on the side of Nautilus, and that could perhaps be because he's later in the collection and in that way he's sort of shown off as more of a difficult boss. I don't know whether or not if that's true or if it's actually just sort of levels put after one another and they're not actually ranked after difficulty in any sort of way. But I like the idea of Nautilus as well, and I didn't really have any idea for a sort of witchy design in my head right now, so I thought it was very fitting that I did Nautilus. Now, that doesn't mean that I had a lot to work with, because if we take a look at Nautilus' design, once again, there's not a lot to work with. He's basically a square with two other squares attached to him, which are supposed to work sort of as fists. And in the level where him and Aura actually work together, he can even enlarge those fists and sort of use them as like a punching weapon or a crushing weapon or stuff like that. But then in his own level, he actually uses them as sort of a ranged weapon, as he kind of shoots out a sort of energy, could be sort of like lasers out of them, and then he also creates shockwaves by banging his fists together. So they're sort of multi-purpose, but I think of them more as like a blunt weapon, or more specifically like knuckle dusters he's got attached to his hands. But other than that, then we don't really have anything interesting that stands out. He's still sort of a square, which is not by any means a new design that we've seen in Project Arrhythmia. So all that we really have to go off is actually just a facial expression, a color palette, and then a setting. Because Nautilus, of course, the name sort of leads up to it, is sort of an underwater being or an underwater creature, because that's sort of what it seems like his level is depicting, with all sorts of dangerous debris and maybe even bubbles illustrated flowing up through the water. This of course let me know that whatever direction I was going with Nautilus, then it had to be something underwater themed. I couldn't just smack a hoodie on him and some leggings and then call it a day. I actually had to make something that would fit the underwater sort of aesthetic. But one of the first real ideas that I actually thought of, and actually I also found out that you guys suggested, was putting him in an old school diving bell. And in case you don't know what an old school diving bell is, then it's basically something that stems back to the 1800s, back when we didn't have wetsuits or proper equipment to sort of dive underwater with. So one of the solutions to this was just creating gigantic, extremely inconvenient and really hard to use diving exosuits, basically, sort of like mini mechs that you would just be thrown to the bottom of the ocean, and then you would just sort of try your absolute best to walk through the already heavy water. It was really heavy work, it was probably really inconvenient to use, but it's led to a bunch of really cool designs, and they've actually even inspired a lot of modern fiction and modern media, such as BioShock, with all the Big Daddy designs. So I decided to use this as sort of the main body of the character design, with the very heavy top keeping him firm on the underwater surface so he could stomp any enemies that get in his way, but with the fabric and mobility freedom so he'd still be able to like really punch people, because that's his primary weapon. And that's also how most of the old school diving bells looked. They were very heavy on top, but under that they were basically just sort of a bad attempt at a wetsuit. Nonetheless, the idea translated pretty well onto the human character design itself. I was pretty happy with it. The only part I was not very happy with is the old diving bell and how it covers up a lot of the face. I really wanted Nautilus's facial expression to be visible, so here I actually deviated away from the diving bell with sort of like the grids and all that covering the face basically entirely. And then I went over to more of like a 60s design, or sort of brain in a jar design, where it's just sort of like a glass tube on top. Which, granted, it doesn't impair Nautilus nearly as much. Now he's also a little bit, or like you're actually able to tell the difference between him and the Big Daddy designs, or the actual just old diving bell. Now he's not just a walking suit of armor, now he's actually got some personality to him because he can still sort of spy out of the glass. I didn't put a lot of effort into the actual face because, once again, I don't have a lot of descriptions to go off of. I actually even completely forgot to go back and read the description about Nautilus, which I believe was introduced back when both Aura and Nautilus was introduced at the same time. In the first level in the OL 666 collection. I completely forgot about that, but I still don't think that would give me any specific ideas to go off of when it actually comes to the facial design. So I sort of left it up to be sort of blank. You could actually still see sort of Nautilus's design being there, basically just with a little bit of a tuft of hair to make him look a little more human underneath the suit. But the face itself ended up being pretty plain, except for the fact that I gave him some pretty big bushy eyebrows, just because his overall character design, once again, like shape language, he's a square, so he's heavy, he's sturdy, he's reliable, and I wanted to make him seem a little more hefty and a little more manly, so I gave him those big eyebrows to show off a little more masculinity in this one. However, I thought of a solution when it came to his most identifiable feature, which is his knuckle dusters, or basically like the spikes that he has on the sides of his hand cubes. I guess we could call them that. But basically, me and a friend very recently were talking about the good old Call of Duty Black Ops Zombies days and how we used to play Black Ops Zombies all the time and just have fun shooting zombies. Trust me, I know that sounds like an unrelated topic, but in that game there's a weapon called the Galva Knuckles, and they're basically just these knuckle dusters that you use to knock out zombies, but they've also got electricity running through them. So I thought it would be a pretty cool idea, instead of just giving Nautilus like a random weapon for no reason. I actually wanted him to have sort of like these electric knuckle dusters attached to his fists, and that would sort of make sense as well, because even when he slaps them together they create like a sonic wave, and you can also shoot lasers out of them. And while these might not be able to do that, then I was able to put little like electric drills on them to make them look a little more like the Big Daddies from the Bioshock, sort of like as an homage to those. But they look like at least these super powered knuckle dusters now, which is really cool, and I even attached it to this electric backpack underwater. Now, you could talk about how safe it is to have electronic hardware underwater, but I don't care. I still think this was a pretty cool idea, and I'm pretty happy with the way this weapon turned out for Nautilus, even though it was a little more of like detail that was put into this compared to, say, Mist. Or the Mist humanizing character design that I did last time. I put a little more effort into drawing the small wires and actually creating detail in this. Then I still really like how it turned out, and I think it was definitely worth the time and effort, because now he doesn't have some big swinging weapon or something he's using. He's actually using his knuckles as in his character design. So I feel like this one turned into a pretty successful humanization, in my opinion at least. But what do you guys think? Do you think it turned into a successful humanization challenge, or did it not? Was there different sort of advice you could give me? It'd be good or bad. I would love to hear about it, because some of you guys actually left some pretty freaking good feedback last time, such as one commenter. Hold on, let me actually get his name here. Oh, Tigabo, that's actually really freaking cool. You created like a Lavender Town, the level Lavender Town for Project Arrhythmia. That's really cool. But anyway, you wrote, I'd love to see you try to fully shade it, it'd give more depth to your works, and also make it look more complete. And I actually tried to do that this time. I tried to put a little more effort into shading, and while shading is still not my strongest suit, then it's good to get some practice, and I thought that this one turned out better than some of the other attempts I've done at shading. So I'm quite happy with the work and how it turned out. It's a little more 3D now, and it doesn't just look like a completely flat 2D drawing. So in many ways, maybe I was a little more nice to this drawing compared to Mist in our Pure Gint drawing. And I'm sorry, Mist. Maybe I'll get back to you and I'll redraw you at some point and give you the proper effort that you deserve. But anyways, that's about all the time that I've got for this one. So please remember to tell me how you feel about this drawing down in the comments, but also tell me what I'm gonna be drawing in the next one. Because I plan on not just drawing every second week anymore. I actually want to use my brain and my creative fingers a little more, and I actually can feel myself forgetting to draw a bit if there's such a long space between me drawing. So I want to get used to drawing a little bit more, and I want to do more drawing challenges and stuff like that. So tell me what I'm supposed to draw down in the comments, and it doesn't have to be just Project Arrhythmia either. I was actually thinking of maybe taking like video game villains and turning them into humans too, and just doing all sorts of like morphing or changing up the design challenges in the future. So if you got any good ideas in your brain, remember to put them down in the comments and I'll maybe do them for the next one. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.